Many thanks for staying tuned. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. Today, we intend to look at youth and substance abuse on the program. Now, according to a report released in September of this year by the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime in Nigeria, about 14.3 million Nigerians between the ages of 15 and 64 years abuse drugs and substance in Nigeria, and that is quite alarming. At the moment, one is not sure whether or not this is a problem really associated with only young people, but it's been said that not just young people abuse drugs and substances, but there is an increased number in the number of young people that actually abuse drugs and substances. And so today, are we able to know why there is this increase, or why young people are tending to lean towards the use of drugs and other substances? Hopefully, we'll be able to find answers to these questions on the program today. And joining the conversation is the CEO, Compassionate Care Recovery Initiative. He's also a medical doctor, Dr. Dokun Adedeji is on the program this morning. Thank you, Doctor, for being on the program here today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Right. I know that, of course, you work with a lot of young people who are addicted one way or the other to the use of this issue. But would you say that at the moment, are we doing enough in terms of awareness and campaign against the use of drugs, or on why people are daily getting addicted to substances?
Thank you very much, Bimbo. I must say that on a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of creating awareness and letting people understand, maybe we're on 3.
Oh, wow.
And the 3 will be because of the efforts of NDLEA, more so from the reports of interdiction and all the rest of it. But I think, with due respect, that is an area we all must be involved. And I'm glad that you are putting focus on this. And this is what I keep saying. We cannot make the issue of substance abuse a topical thing for now, a knee-jerk response. We talk about it today for one reason and we forget. It has to be something that has to be consistently
put in the front burner.
Put in the front burner, because it's huge.
Right.
You gave a figure. That figure still reflects what was found in the UNODC report of 2017-2018. But I can tell you it's much more than that, because in 2020, when Mr. Oliver Stop, who was the country director of UNODC, spoke during the World Drugs Day, he said it was close to between 20 to 25 million Nigerians who had used drugs. And if you look at the statistics today and what we're seeing in terms of experience, practical experience on the field, is much worse. And that's why we should worry. And they're saying by 2030, there'll be 40% increase across the use of drugs. And if you look at 40% sitting upon 14.3%, that's huge.
That's huge.
And Nigeria has a population of over 200 million people. And so we need to do much more than we're doing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the figures quoted by Abimbola was quite disturbing, and I would like to find out that aside from peer pressure, what else is pushing or luring these young ones and even adults into taking all these substances?
I'm glad that you raised the issue of adults. I'm worried many times when Nigerians say youth, young people. Look, the survey covered 15 to 64. And if you do a breakdown of the figures, the age bracket that is most impacted is 25 to 39. If you look at that very well, that is economic sector of any nation. And so but today I can tell you that as young as 10, he used drugs. I was invited to Ogbomoso early last year to help them come and set up a rehab center. They brought some 4 young boys to me. They were age 10.
What?
They're already age 10. I still have the pictures on my phone. I saw them myself. And that is Ogbomoso. And then you can come to Lagos and go to certain areas that I don't want to mention. You will see them. Because their parents live in the joint. They live there, so they take. Look, apart of what you said, peer pressure, yeah, peer pressure is huge. But the availability of these things and the commonality of the drugs. And let me also tell you that you can talk about drugs, when we talk about marijuana, there are locally concocted things that people are using themselves. This was very evident during the COVID when you couldn't go out to go buy, so they were concocting it. If I tell you today there's naturally occurring substances that people use. Okay, people use petrol. They abuse petrol. Gum. Evostic. Pit latrine. So you can imagine, so when we say, that's why we don't call it drugs anymore, we call it substances. If, for instance, you go to the north, you hear something called zakami. It's a naturally occurring seed. Extremely potent. It's still being studied. The components are still being studied. And then there's something in the south that they call gegemu. Gegemu is a naturally occurring plant that people plant at the back of their house to drive snakes. It's not tobacco. Gegemu, so what they do, they pluck the leaves and boil them as you are boiling vegetables. The fluid from it is huge. And then the fruit, the rough fruit of the gegemu itself, they dry it, they grind it and use. So you see, the thing, I'm glad that you are raising this issue. The level of awareness must be heightened, but hey, what is limiting all these things? Stigma and discrimination. The way we look at drugs, the use of drugs, you see, when somebody tests positive, for instance, in an institution, in an office space, they call them addicts. Those are not addicts.
What are they?
Those are just users. I mean, somebody can be a user, it can be a functional user. Accidentally, you can use drugs. Anyone can use drugs. You go to a party and they give you scoochies.
You're not even sure what is inside.
I mean, cookies, for instance.
Even cake.
Even cake.
Right.
For instance, jollof rice, noodles, they use marijuana to garnish them. Pepper soup. So you can imagine that the ease of use, that's why you say a lot of people, some use it without knowing.
Right.
Some use it, I mean, everybody who uses is initial use. And there's initial use that will compel you to evaluate. Do I want to continue? Right. And then initial abuse comes. And then tolerance comes. Dependence comes, and then addiction comes. So it's a stage. So at any point, you can say to yourself, I want to stop. But when it gets to the area of tolerance to dependence and addiction, it's difficult to stop.
Okay. But doctor, what have you discovered to be the attraction for these people?
You know, let me tell you, let me be honest with you. Truly, when people take this, there's a high that comes with it. You see, but what I keep telling people, the high is not natural. It is not a reality, it's a perception. And so when they take it, oh, it makes me feel cool. I can sleep well. I can eat well. Then you know those things are not reality. And so when they take it, and so it depends on the reaction. If you consider it positive as a benefit, you will continue.
Right.
But if you say, hey, what the heck, it didn't do me nothing that they said, you can stop. As I said to you, there is no street of Nigeria, with due respect, that there's no drug. You can, it's so easily accept. I mean, look at all those sachet drinks. Do people know that that is the first element of substance abuse? In the classification that we do for substance abuse, the initial one is called socially acceptable, alcohol and cigarette. If somebody takes alcohol, you are not likely to label him until he begins to fall in the gutters. Go and check the sachet drinks. I don't want to be particular about some so that they don't. There are some, 42% alcohol content, 40%, 35%. I wish I brought you some of this sachet, but it will contravene branding or something.
Right.
So when those, and people can go out and buy them for 50 naira. Affordability. So before people get high on the things that are expensive, they use those ones.
Right.
And then so you can imagine, if you can go anywhere, okay, there was a time some people sat down and got, you know, the beverages like all these sachet beverages. They will open them, they will grind tramadol, they will put marijuana and put it in it and reseal it. And so
Is that not deception?
It is deception, but again, that is the way they can attract the young people going to school, primary school students.
And then give that to them?
So they buy. There was a time I spoke and the government...
Like a candy?
Like a candy. So what you see, they call it like conje. So when you see, there was a time I spoke on your station, the governor had to compel that people should not sell
around the schools.
Look, honestly, when that happens, and you know, the value system of our country has gone down south.
Right.
If you are not rich, who cares? But a lot of people today, we call them billionaires. On what? What do they do for a living? That many of them have never walked the walk that I walked. And they're billionaires. Maybe what they do. But until we come to a time that value system gets elevated to the point in which, hey, we worry, homes are disrupted today.
Right.
Many homes are living in disarray. Those are some of the elements that push these people. And some of the things that parents ought to know as well is this. When you push your children in competition with your friends, it's a problem. What is a 14, 15-year-old student doing in the university? In a classical sense. There are some that can be gifted.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that. But regular people, and then some schools today in Lagos say there's no primary 6 anymore. From primary 4, they
To
take
JS1.
people
To secondary school.
You take into secondary. A 10-year, an 8-year-old in secondary is doing what? You see, when we steal their adult, the years from them,
Their childhood from them.
from them, you know, it's a development process, and then you compel them to do things that they're not supposed to do. Another thing is, when we, as parents, we dehumanize our children, the things we say to them, comparing them and maligning them, so look at your brother is in university, you are still there. Comparing them. And a lot of things are responsible.
Okay.
And again, social media. Our artists, our entertainers, influencers. When they see them on TV puffing and everything, so the kids say, hey, if this guy can do it, why can't I do it?
And even some of the musical videos that we see.
Right.
Absolutely. Look, let me just be careful.
Doctor, let me quickly take you back to something. I didn't want to stop you when you raised that. But tapping into your medical experience as a doctor, and then you mentioned earlier that some people also get high on some outrageous things. Could that be a disorder?
No, thank you. Thank you for raising that. One of the things today the world has come to recognize is that substance abuse is a health issue that should be treated as a public health concern. It should not be stigmatized or criminalized.
Okay.
You said something, we know there is a brain disorder because you alter the component of the teaching, the workings of the brain. You see, in the brain, there is a dopamine-mediated center, and dopamine is a hormone of pleasure. Right. So when you do something, not necessarily drugs, anything that gives you a sense of satiation, the brain connotes it as something that is beneficial. And so because of that, you alter the workings of the brain. And so that is why we need to look at them as somebody who is a diabetic, a hypertensive. And I said to people, do we stigmatize diabetics?
No.
We don't. So why do we stigmatize substance use? But I understand it's ignorance. Right. People do not have a knowledge of what happens. And also because people look at it as reputational. If, for instance, if a big man's son uses drugs, he considers it a shame and he hides it. But I said to them, we will never get an answer if we go that route.
That way.
One example I always give is the example of Professor Ransom Kuti during the HIV/AIDS. You know, he came out and said, my younger brother died, and that demystified HIV/AIDS. And people could come out and say, look, yes, I have it, we can deal with it. It's the same way with substance abuse. But nobody wants to, because the moment you talk, everybody begins to look at you. If he becomes a commissioner, that commissioner that used to use drugs, you know.
Right, so that's social stigmatization.
Yes, I tell people, go and read a book written by Hunter Biden, the son of President Joe Biden. The title of the book is Beautiful Things. He gave his history of drug use. It was a cocaine addict for about 20 years. But in 2019, he cleaned out. Right. And he said one thing we will never forget, the love of his parents. Not that they not a permissive nature, but a loving nature. If we don't deal with people with love, with understanding, with appreciation of what they're going, and put a level of empathy, we make them feel out of space, unusual, and then they don't seek treatment. And when we don't allow people to self-report, to come to a stage in which they can say, look, I have an issue, we're going to run it under the table. There is no office, I can say it candidly, no organization in this country that does not have one or two people using drugs.
Okay, so users, rather than say they are addicts.
Absolutely, that's why today we
Users.
call them substance abuse disorder.
Okay.
We don't call them addicts anymore.
Let's quickly go back, sorry, Ajibola, to the younger people who, again, because again, earlier you talked about 10-year-old whom you came across, and now Ajibola mentioned earlier peer pressure. Is that the only thing at the moment that draws young people to the use of substances?
No, at all. I mean, some of the presentation of those substances, you know, there are some that come in like sweets, like pills, and then they're multicolored. They can come like Smarties, you know.
Right, yeah, the colorful balls.
The
yeah.
colorful balls, and then the names that are given. When you hear something called Colos,
yeah.
you hear something called Arizona, because something called Loud, Ghana Loud, Canadian Loud. You know the names, I mean, like what they call brownies, Thailand, and all those. So, you know, the social flair around it.
Right, and these things are just in the faces.
And then the faces of people. Look, honestly, there is no... Look, I tell people that is another thing about the awareness. People believe that the drug program should be handled by NDLA. Of course not.
Right.
How many people work in the NDLA? Can they be at your parties? Can they be at the weddings? Can they be in your schools? Can they be in your homes? Do you know today people don't have to go out to buy drugs? They order
Online,
them
yeah.
online. And I've said to many parents, when you see dispatch riders coming too many times to some homes, watch out. It can't just be food.
It could be anything.
Oh, it could be anything, you bet.
All right, doctor. So for those who are already, for those who are users rather, whether adults or young ones, what are those signs that can give us an inkling that, okay, probably he or she has started abusing some substances?
You know, the easiest thing that I say to people is this. Any behavioral change must raise your antenna. So if you wait for some particular, you may really not. But if you know your child, you see, what I advocate is parents should know their children. Teachers should be observant. Colleagues in the office should be observant. When there's a sudden change, somebody is sleeping in the office, performances begin to drop either in school or in the workplace. Dressing begins to change. The way he speaks, it begins to change. His attitude begins to change. Begins argumentative and rude, and even sometimes violent. Or you see them aggregate together in areas or times with your children leaving home at particular time and returning late at night. Eyes are red. But, you know, I tell parents this, that, you know, we need to be very careful looking for signs. These young people have found ways.
They mask it.
They mask it. Let me give you two quick examples. When you see red eyes, they think, oh, this person is using something. But, you know, they can go get Vicin and use Vicin, and Vicin will clear the redness. Or when you see them, I mean, when you sometimes, the way they behave, they can mask it. There's some sweet, there's a particular drug. If you take it, Refnol, for instance, they call it Roofie. If you want to know who takes it, the tongue is colored, is bluish. What if they take something that looks like that? There's a sweet that looks blue, and then they take it. Or they use perfume,
And
heavy perfume. Or they will take heavy menthol sweets.
And sometimes I see that the weather is quite harsh, and you see a young boy with a head warmer in the sun.
You begin to, look, that's why I say we need to watch. Have you noticed that many people begin, they call you hoodies, and then the style of dressing, the manner of doing things, those are the things we need to
Wear
watch.
socks.
for.
Yeah, and then your child.
Sometimes some children are just so weird. They do all those things, but they're clean.
No, I understand. You see, that's what I'm saying. If you know your child, deviation is easy to understand, to appreciate. But when you don't know your child, the only time you come home is weekend, and most weekend you have gone to parties and you don't know what your kid... Look, let me give you an example. A child comes to a father, wants to ask a question. The father says, can't you see that I'm busy? I'm working on... Oh, the guy says, okay, Daddy, I'll come back. Let that man call him in 30 minutes. The boy will not ask the question again. He will say, Daddy, don't worry, I've sorted it. So,
Because
look,
you already shut that child
absolutely.
down.
You know, many parents think the way to appreciate their children is give them gift, buy them stuff.
There
That's
has
not
to be
it.
that
Attention.
me time.
Attention,
Right, that
attention,
You need
time.
to speak with them. Sit
With them.
And-
Okay,
and
that's for
guide them.
children. What about adults?
Okay, adult performance. could be a reason of wanting to use drugs to enhance their performance. They say in some funny way, some for sexual reasons, some for office performance. You know, something also is sometimes we over-promote people beyond their competence. So in an attempt to make up, they need to find something to help them. And some, I mean, there's one particular drug now, they call it ice, umpirimiri. If people take ice, for 3 days you may not sleep or eat, and they will not feel it. But the thing is, in a matter of months, will be depreciated and person may die. So for adults using, it's also peer pressure. You may not believe it.
Even for adults?
Even for, you think, you know, that MDs who have issues with self-esteem.
True, and so they need
So
something
they need
to just help
something.
them with
That's why you say a man comes, don't you know who I am? This is a...
He's agitated for nothing.
Yeah, Wole Soyinka said, a tiger does not need to proclaim his tigritude. Who you are is who you are. You don't need to let me know it.
Yeah.
So even adults, some of the things that propel adults are also experimentation. He's in the midst of his friends. They are taking. And they say, this is mommy's child, though he's big.
Oh, my mommy.
Yeah. And then watch them break time. You see some of these people, you call them yuppies, they carry themselves and then go to a house. That's why, and there's nowhere in Lagos where they don't sell drugs. Even the highbrow.
It's now so...
Even in traffic.
It's just there.
Even in
your
traffic.
faces.
If you are driving in certain areas, if you see some people can do like that, they're selling stuff.
They are telling you, yeah. I heard a story about that one time where somebody actually on the island came to meet him and said, is this what you want to buy? And he's like, did I ask you for anything? I mean,
because
it's
since you drove around there and your car is posh.
That means that, okay. Yeah. Let's because of time, so peradventure there are people who are already using. Let's look at rehabilitation care in Nigeria. At the moment, you also mentioned something earlier that a lot of people also find it very difficult to seek for help because they want to keep it hush-hush. They want to keep it in the family. They're handling it their own way, and they are failing a lot because they're not going about it the appropriate way. And so if you notice that your child, your family member, and or adult is abusing and it is becoming a problem, where is the first port of call?
That's a difficult question in the sense that where people first go is psychiatric hospitals.
Okay.
I usually don't advise psychiatric hospitals, but it depends on the presentation that is made. If somebody goes haywire, the first thing to quell him is to go there. But thank goodness, the psychiatric hospitals now begin to understand there's a drug section.
Okay.
So they separate them from the... But what I do say is people should awareness. Seek more knowledge about where these rehabilitation centers are. There are quite a number.
Okay.
The only thing also mitigating against getting help is the prohibitive cost of rehabilitation. Extremely expensive.
Not cheap.
But again, there are some that are not, I mean, doing well. So the first place to go is, how do I say that? Okay, let me give this. You can call NDLA.
Okay.
NDLA has a toll-free number.
Right.
0800 10 20 30 40. They can then give you advice as to what to get, referral what to go.
But won't people be scared or worried that they could also get arrested?
No. You see what Jeremiah has done in NDLA is excellent. He does not punish users. That is his line of management now.
Okay.
You see, if you punish the user, that is double jeopardy.
Right.
The person is a victim already and you are punishing him. So if you call, you don't even have to mention your name.
Okay, it can be anonymous.
It's even,
I just need help.
And the thing is, in different languages, pidgin and all that. Right. But again, there are some rehabilitation centers. I manage one. So, but I don't want to talk, so it doesn't seem I'm advertising it. Yes. But I've been involved in this for like 32 years. So, but where to go will be depending on the knowledge that is available, the information that is available.
Would it be right to go to a hospital first if you cannot call NDLA?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
The unfortunate thing is that many hospitals do not even understand it or appreciate
they're even
it.
Also as judgmental as...
I was going to say that. Right. It's like also going to your pastor and say, they say, until the society increases the level of awareness and knowledge, they will make us appreciate that, oh yes, oh I know somewhere I can do this, and some of the things some of us are beginning to advocate is that institutions, the VCs, must be knowledgeable.
Right.
The corporate organizations, primarily, must also be knowledgeable. So that testing positive does not connote punishment, does not invite punishment. It invites help. And look, I can tell you this. A lot of people that, by God's grace, have helped, some of them are doctors, are lawyers, accountants today. I mean, so they're doing well. So the fact of a use does not mean that that's the end of your life in terms of professionalism or whatever. There's no profession that is spared of drug use.
Yeah.
So how many people are you going to sack? How many people are you going to drive away? But I'm not saying permissiveness. Oh, you can use it and we don't worry. No. But if you make the environment conducive to people can come and complain, and then you can find help for them, and then you then leave them space to be able to come back and continue with their jobs.
Okay.
It happens everywhere else in the world.
In the world.
Why not here?
How
So,
about fear of... Jibola, go ahead.
After getting help or rehabilitation, what are the things that one should do to ensure that they do not go back?
Thank you. Thank you. You know, when people relapse, they blame the user. It is not absolutely true. He has a fault in it because in management, you need him, you need the family, you need the society. So what I'm saying is that if somebody comes for drug treatment, what you see is why the person has come for drug treatment. I tell people that the drug, the addiction is sitting upon pillars. It could be lack of self-esteem. It could be all kinds of things that keep up the pillar. So if you take the drug away, if you don't deal with those pillars, the fundamentals of why he went to drug, he will relapse. Because if he gets, when you put them away in rehab, they don't have the opportunity of use. So when you release them without having addressed those things, it goes back to the same environment that caused this issue. What is the disposition of the parents? What is the disposition of family? If you begin to look at him different, you create a way in which it goes back to people who understand him without question.
Right.
Relapse is not... We tell people that relapse is dependent on many factors. It's not dependent that the man does not want to stop. Many times he wants to stop, but do we help them to stop?
Okay.
If we don't help them, if it's not a joint venture, or if the person you bring to rehabilitation does not have a willingness, you are wasting your time.
Okay. Doctor, before we allow you go, I know you've mentioned the role of the NDLEA. You've also talked about community participation, family participation. But in the face of all we've talked about, we've also identified the fact that these drugs are there in our faces, easily accessible. Does NAFDAC has a role to play here?
Yeah, they do. I think a few weeks ago, NAFDAC and NDLEA signed a memorandum of understanding. Because, why do I say so? There are some drugs of prescription that are abused, like codeine,
right.
Refinol, injection pentazocine, which is called Fortwin. These things are freely available. Why should a patent medicine seller sell those things?
Right.
Why should it be that people can buy drugs off the counter?
Right.
So if there, you see, the thing is, there must be NAFDAC, NDLEA, and government.
So we must strengthen regulations.
We must strengthen regulations, and it's not by punitive measure. You see, when you do that, you put those things on the table. If you ban them, like codeine was banned, you've just made it more lucrative for people who sell.
Right.
So before, what they were selling for less than 1,000, they now sell for about 5,000, 10,000. And they know where to get it.
Yes, and they will still they will disguise to buy.
They will
them.
disguise to buy it.
Okay, but I'm sorry, Abimbola. Beyond the NDLEA and which other agency?
NAFDAC.
NAFDAC. What can NOA also do?
Thank you. You see, there was a time I had a discussion with the former chairman of NOA. I think, what exactly is the role of NOA? Is it just a propaganda machinery of government? Because it is attached to Ministry of Information, they think it's just to be doing jingles. Look, if NOA does not sit down to understand the fundamental issues of Nigerian society, the value depreciation, they can't do much. Because what we're dealing with in this country is the issue of values and the denigration of what we think were the moralities of the times. Anything goes now. So if NOA has a huge role, and I think General also sought an audience with them.
Okay.
I don't know the state of which he's done that with customs. He's done that with corollary agencies that can help the fight.
Right.
Because to think that they alone they can't. So NOA is so important.
Right.
Not only about drug, but about general perspective
So,
of
but
society.
then, like you said, this is not a fight only for the agencies or even the federal
No.
agencies. Everybody must
Everybody.
ensure, especially the parents.
Parents. And you see, before maybe the parents, if Nigeria, particularly the Christian, the religious bodies, don't go back to fundamentals of family values. You see, people come and make noise. Everything that happens in society is a signal of the failure of the family system. So we need to recalibrate our family structure.
Okay. We'll have to leave this conversation here this morning. Thank you so much, Dr. Dokun Adedeji, CEO, Compassionate Care Recovery Initiative. Thank you for finding time to be here.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
All right, that's the much we'll take on this side of the table this morning. We'll take a quick break. When the conversation returns, it'll be the turn of Adebimpe and one of the A's here.
I was there yesterday.
Okay. Okay. I'll be with Adebimpe on the other side to take you through the Lagos conversation.